You've been there. Things are going well. She's laughing at your jokes, texting you first, leaning in closer. And then, she pulls away. Not physically at first, energetically. Her replies get slower. Her eyes dart more. She says she's busy. You try harder, but it only seems to push her further. You ask yourself, what did I do wrong? But here's the twist. Maybe it's not about what you did. Maybe it's about what you triggered. Because emotional distance isn't always caused by a mistake. Sometimes it's caused by something far more powerful, emotional intensity. And when a woman isn't ready to meet you at that level, she pulls back. Not because you're weak, but because your presence stirred something real, and real is terrifying. Most men respond to this emotional distance with panic. They chase, overcommunicate, try to fix things that aren't broken. But every message sent from a place of fear only confirms her doubts. See, emotional closeness requires her to open a door inside herself, a door she might have kept shut for years. And when your presence, your gaze, your calm, your masculine containment starts to knock on that door, she feels it. Not consciously, but in her nervous system. That's when the retreat begins. Her instinct isn't to reject you, it's to protect the version of herself she's been upholding, the one that doesn't need, the one that stays in control. But closeness demands surrender, and surrender scares the hell out of someone who's been running the show alone. So what does she do? She pulls away, not because she doesn't like you, but because she feels too much. And it's unfamiliar, overwhelming, maybe even dangerous to the identity she's constructed. You triggered something ancient in her, a recognition, not just of chemistry, but of safety. And real safety is terrifying when you've only known survival. That's why your silence matters. Not silence as a tactic, but silence as grounded presence. When you don't chase, when you don't beg for reassurance, when you allow space without resentment, you're telling her nervous system, I'm not here to control, I'm here to witness. That's the moment her inner walls begin to crack. If this is hitting home, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell. This journey's just getting started. But here's where most men go wrong. They sense her pulling away, and their inner alarm bells go off. They rush in with messages, validation, apologies, anything to restore the closeness they just lost. Not realizing that this energy, this pursuit, is exactly what intensifies her retreat. Because to her, it confirms the fear that closeness equals suffocation. Your attempts to pull her back don't feel comforting, they feel invasive. What she actually needs is contrast, space, time. She needs to see that your center doesn't collapse just because she's distant, that your presence is not dependent on her approval. When you hold that stillness, not out of spite but out of trust, it changes everything. This is where emotional distance becomes a mirror. If you chase, it reveals your insecurity. If you stay centered, it reveals your depth. Most men can't handle the tension of that space. They either lash out in frustration or crumble into self-doubt. But the man who understands emotional polarity, he does something different. He holds the silence. He welcomes the unknown. And in that stillness, he invites her to come back on her own terms. Not because he manipulated her, but because his grounded presence reminded her of safety, not pressure. You become the calm in her storm, not another storm to survive. That's the paradox. The closer you try to get, the further she drifts, unless she feels emotionally free to choose closeness. Most men suffocate the connection with their need for control, validation, or instant reassurance. But attraction, especially deep feminine attraction, blooms in space, not in grasping. So when she pulls away, don't interpret it as rejection. See it as the dance of polarity. She's leaning back to feel the strength of your stillness. If you collapse into panic or chase, you break the rhythm. But if you stand in your center, she feels the invisible cord tighten. She remembers your gravity. Masculine presence isn't about chasing. It's about anchoring. When she pulls away emotionally, it's not always a sign that she's lost interest. Often, it's her unconscious test. Is he stable without me? Can he hold his own energy? If you react with over-texting, questioning, or emotional flooding, you answer that test with a loud no. But if you remain grounded, living your purpose, unshaken by the distance, you pass. And passing doesn't mean she comes running back immediately. It means her respect grows. Her curiosity deepens. She begins to wonder why she feels more drawn to you when you do less. This is where most men fail. They think attraction is built through constant validation, reassurance, and emotional closeness. But for many women, especially those with unresolved emotional wounds, true attraction ignites when there's a healthy gap, a mystery. When you're not always available, not always explainable, not always reactive. This space invites her into the unknown, where her mind fills in the blanks, where desire simmers in silence. You become the story she tells herself, not because you spoke more, but because you let her imagination do the work. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing, they often come closer. When you stop explaining yourself, they start asking deeper questions. When you stop reacting to every emotional wave she throws at you, she starts wondering what you're really feeling. That curiosity breeds attraction, not manipulation, not detachment, but mastery of presence. You're not ignoring her. You're allowing the relationship to breathe, to mature, to move from intensity to depth. And that shift is what most men never give her. A man who holds his center. When a woman feels your energy is calm, grounded, and untethered to her every move, something remarkable happens. She begins to respect you. Respect is the silent foundation of attraction. Without it, desire fades. But with it, even distance feels magnetic. Your grounded presence sends a message. I'm not here to fill a void. I'm not here to chase validation. I'm here because I choose to be. That choice, spoken through silence and action, holds more weight than any sweet word. She senses it, and she starts leaning in, not to test, but to connect. Most men try to solve a woman's withdrawal like a problem. They analyze, they explain, they over-communicate. But emotional attraction doesn't respond to logic. It responds to energy. The more you talk, the more you signal fear. The more you chase, the more you broadcast need. And the more you explain, the less mysterious you become. Stoic men understand this. They don't fill the silence just to feel better. They let it speak. Because in that space, she has a chance to feel your absence. And only when she feels it can she realize its value. Silence is uncomfortable. But that's the point. In that discomfort, the truth shows itself. If she pulls away and you don't chase, you reveal something rare. That you are not afraid to lose her. That you are not performing for affection. That you value peace over persuasion. This triggers a shift. She begins to question her withdrawal. She wonders what makes you so composed, why her distance doesn't shake you. And that curiosity becomes obsession. Because in a world full of men who overexpress, the man who withholds speaks louder. She checks her phone more than usual, rereads your last message, wonders if you noticed her pulling away, or worse, if you noticed and didn't care. That's when the emotional pendulum swings. You've become a mirror she can't control, a man she can't read. And in that space of uncertainty, her attraction grows, because you've stopped trying to convince her. And in doing so, you've created the rarest form of desire, the desire to be chosen by someone who doesn't need you. Most men chase clarity. They seek confirmation, reassurance, labels. But the Stoic man doesn't. He lives in ambiguity with ease. Not because he's playing games, but because his validation isn't outsourced. She pulls away. He notices, but he doesn't react. He doesn't rush to fix the gap, doesn't flood her with attention, doesn't try to win her back. Why? Because he trusts in natural polarity. He knows that if the connection was real, it will return stronger. And if it doesn't, then her absence was a blessing in disguise. Women feel this. They feel when a man's center is unshakable. When she distances herself and he doesn't chase, she begins to question. Not out of insecurity, but curiosity. Why isn't he trying to win me back? Doesn't he care? And in that silence, a new kind of gravity forms. Not one built on fear or guilt, but on mystery. Because the Stoic man doesn't manipulate her emotions, he simply maintains his position, and that alone makes her feel more than any words could. She begins to replay the moments in her head. Not because you asked her to, not because you sent a message, but because silence creates space. And in that space, she starts to hear her own voice more clearly. The voice that says, he was different. The voice that says, he didn't need me, but he chose me. And in a world full of noise, texts, calls, validation seeking, your absence becomes louder than presence. Your stillness becomes a message, not of disinterest, but of strength, of self-worth, of calm certainty. And as that silence lingers, something powerful shifts inside her. She starts to reflect on her own patterns, why she pulled away, what fear was triggered, and why your grounded presence now feels so haunting in its absence. Because you're not begging, you're not explaining, you're not reacting, you're simply being. And that beingness, that sovereign silence, it starts to pull her back. Not with pressure, but with polarity. Not with force, but with magnetism. She realizes, maybe for the first time, that her emotional distance doesn't control the narrative anymore. You do. Through non-reaction, through poise, through presence. And here's the part that really flips the script. Your silence becomes a mirror so clear that she can't escape what it reflects. Her own insecurities, her need for control, her unresolved wounds. While she expected you to chase, to panic, to fill the gap with validation, what she got was space. And in that space, her own emotions echo louder. This is why silence isn't just a lack of sound, it's a spiritual jolt. A reminder that your worth isn't tied to her approval, that your energy doesn't bend to emotional chaos, and that your love doesn't come with desperation. It's offered, not imposed, gifted, not clung to. As she sits with that silence, something strange happens. Her mind starts replaying every interaction, not from a place of logic, but from a place of lack. Why did he stop reaching out? Why is he okay without me? What did I miss? The mystery eats away at her more than any words ever could. Because when a man remains unmoved, when he stays composed without turning cold, it signals something rare, emotional self-control. And that is magnetic. It challenges her perception of power in the dynamic. Suddenly, the one who walks away with grace becomes the one who holds the highest value. And that, more than charm, looks, or effort, is what makes her obsess. In the end, it's not the loudest man who captures her attention. It's the quietest one who carries depth. The man who doesn't perform, doesn't chase, doesn't beg to be seen. His silence is not empty, it's full of presence. It says, I am whole, with or without you. That kind of man doesn't just attract her, he disorients her. Because in a world where everyone is loud, predictable, and emotionally reactive, the Stoic man stands out like fire in the snow. He doesn't need to prove his worth. He lives it. And in doing so, he becomes unforgettable.